We lived in Nigeria, and my parents were here. I guess they were economic migrants at the time. My father, he was a bank manager, so he thought he'd come and develop his career and fit in, but that didn't happen. And then we were left with relatives in the village in Nigeria. And a few years later on, kind of this horrible thing happened, which was the Nigerian-Biafran Civil War. And so we became kind of estranged from our parents. Everything was just this absolute bedlam, destruction, fear. Because when war happens, nobody are friends. Your neighbors would, it's quite easy survival. There was some other children there that had lost their parents, but you just do what you can. So I just stuck with my sisters, and we settled into first camp, and then that started to get bombed and raided. So middle of the night, be explosions, and we'd get up and just literally run into the forest, into the trees, and carry on for 20 odd hours to try and find another refugee camp. And then we was there, and then until they found us again, and the war arrived at the camp, and the civilians were up running again, and there's no food. There was no food, so you just have to eke out whatever you could to try and survive. And my sisters, amazing. They were beyond their years. So they took care of me. They were my parents. So they developed this roadside market, and they used to just follow the older women because we was at Mark. So they made little biscuits from, I don't even know how they found flour, but they sold them to the soldiers and found some money to buy some food to feed me. Sometimes there were relief support, aid that came through various charities, I guess, from here. I think, so we had things like powdered milk and powdered fish, and I remember the powdered fish we get was like always gritty because everything would be gone, so it was just powder that was left in the sack, and we'd get that, and my sisters would do something with it. And because we had no adults with us, so we kind of shoved the back of the queue all the time. But just the resilience of children is quite an incredible thing. I remember being in the camp when there were TV. I didn't know what TV or film cameras were. It was just a bunch of children standing around and this thing pointing at us. So mother spotted the child, me, her son, who she'd not seen for a very long time. She tried to contact the BBC. I think she tried to contact the reporter. I don't know whether she recognized or she heard the region where we were, and headed there. She probably flew into Lagos and just managed to find her way into Igbo land and to us. My sister Flamina, she dreamt about her mum coming to find and rescue us. Before she finished her story, we looked up on the horizon, we saw this woman approaching us. So we just legged it, ran towards her like starving hyenas, and it was our mother, and she'd found us. And so the rest is kind of history, as they say. We left the camp, and an amazing mother had also chartered an aircraft. They were firing and stuff in the distance because they knew that something was going on. So the plane turned around quickly as we jumped in and shoved the luggage in a hold, and there was no seats. It was just a cargo craft. Just sat on the floor and held onto the ribs of the fuselage, and we took off. So when we arrived in London, Brixton, and I think probably the day after that, Father kind of walked me down to the local primary school. I had no English at all. I knew nothing, but it didn't even matter for me because I was safe and I was just in this primary school with lots of children. But the thing was also, the war came with me in my head. Because I had this fear of airplane. Because during the war, whenever you heard an aircraft, you'd run for cover. So at school, whenever I heard an aeroplane, I'd run and come on, we have to run for cover, telling my friends. They just stood there and pointed and laughed at me, and I was hiding behind trees. And on the way home, I'd dive into somebody's front garden, hide behind the bins, and so that lasted a little while until I kind of outgrew it. And out of that came my passion for airplanes. I wanted to be a pilot, which is an interesting thing. Yeah, so I did that for quite a while. I did learn to fly. I worked and paid part-time paid for my flying lessons, and then I think I was due to have a solo thing before your final PPL qualification. But I don't know, life gets, I wasn't actually so interested in it anymore, and then everything else just kind of, I got into boxing and sports and other things that took my attention. But I was glad I made friends with the aeroplane. Home was incredibly challenging. Home was difficult, but we didn't know it was difficult, because it was better than where we were before. My parents were not the best of friends, so whenever they were together, it was intense, and arguments and fights, physical fights. So we just had a sub-family. Myself and my siblings were up in the attic rooms, and parents were downstairs. And mother was very frustrated in lots of different ways, and she worked so hard. And she had lots to contend with, and she had all these children to raise, and she did it virtually single-handed. Because after a few years, my father left and went back to Nigeria. Mother made sure that we weren't going to be dropouts, or we were going to make something of ourselves. Especially being the first son, there's a lot of responsibility there. And so I struggled a lot with English, with reading and writing, spelling. I struggled because I had the fear in me, because I could not get anything wrong. If I stumbled while I was reading, I'd stand in front of her and to read my book, and if I stumbled with any words, she would punish me. So of course I had no interest in anything academic. I just did everything to avoid it, which I guess the other side of that is my woodwork, because I picked up wood, and that's one of my favourite things, is just wood, and the love of wood, and just having that relationship with wood has saved me. But I wasn't allowed to do anything with my hands. Even at school, I'd bring something back that I'd made in woodwork, and just like, oh, it's rubbish, read your book, read your book. I was not interested in being a lawyer or a doctor. It just wasn't my thing. So it was interesting times. Everybody did well at school. I struggled, but I loved school. I never missed a day. The school uniform was blue, and for the first year and a half, mine was a green jumper with a hole in it. So it stuck out like a sore thumb, but it's character forming. So now I wear nice clothes all the time. Everybody left school in the sixth form to get jobs, and I had no idea what getting a job was. So I stayed the next 3 years, and I looked out the window one day and I saw this girl running into school late. Oh, wow, I was just like blown over. I just, okay, I'm going to head her off down the corridor. She's going to come in either the other entrance or that one. I panicked, so I legged it down there, and luckily I see her coming up the stairs, so I introduced myself. Oh yeah, I know your sister, she runs for the school. Oh, okay, right. Anyway, I've got to go now. Right. Okay, so that's how it started in, I think, 1976, a long time ago. And then we secretly we were friends for a good few years. And then we weren't allowed to we couldn't be together, we couldn't be seen together. So we'd walk and then separate when we saw people coming, and not allowed to hold hands. Everything just this clandestine kind of relationship we had. Of course, the kind of cultural differences, being Indian and me being black, wasn't really a perfect recipe in the 70s. A few years later, I got the announcement that her family moving back to India, which is just so Okay, well, that's fine. I'm going to, I didn't think anything was going to, kill the relationship, but I had no idea where India was. And in the letter was the address, her first letter. And then I was down Sunshine Tours to book my flight ticket to India in 1979. So I went to India every year secretly for 7 years while she was at university. And then just before her final year, we got married in India. I went to town hall and got married. No big deal, took a bus, got married. And then when she finished her master's, she came back to England and we just set up life here. So there's nothing you can't achieve if you really want to. It's interesting because my life is surrounded by women. I've worked with them in social care and kind of therapeutic work. And I have 5 sisters and I'm gifted with 2 daughters. I've always wanted daughters because I had the best models, my sisters, so I've always wanted daughters as a father. Which is quite interesting because, yeah, but you're African man, you want sons and stuff. There's nothing a son can do that my daughter would not do. Nothing. Nothing that my daughters as women cannot achieve or do that men could. Nothing. We've made sure that that's how we raised them. So yeah, they're fine ladies. They're great girls. I was 16 and I was going to see Beulah. I was waiting for the bus and the shop behind me had a vacancy sign for staff. And I was at this dilemma, kind of go for the job, which I really wanted, or miss my bus. And it's just like, so I went for the job and in there I walked in and it was just an amazing experience because I met Peter Boyser, the founder of Pizza Express, and instantly we just linked together. It was amazing. And I walked out with the job and the boss was waiting for me. So my relationship there lasted 7 years and I went from being a pizza chef to waiter to, and then the whole franchise thing kicked in and I became the franchise trainer. I had a vegetarian vegan restaurant with an art gallery inside called Pepperton. So we served food. We made amazing food, really amazing food. People came from, people used to book, they're coming from various parts of the world and they'd phone up to book to come and eat with us. And we had an education aspect of that because I had a garden. So local schools came and we'd sow the seeds in the ground just to illustrate that food actually came from the ground. The art gallery which Beulah ran was amazingly successful. She won a number of awards for that too. And I got Best Social Enterprise and Best Community Business. And before that, I trained as a therapist, so my work there with young people was, manage projects in schools and, and various children's charities and local governments. I did amazing work with families, children, fathers across the board. But this woman walked into the restaurant one day, and she suffered from MS, and we were talking about running. I said, "I've always wanted to run a marathon." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, why don't you?" "Well, I can't walk. I can't walk unaided." I said, "Okay." So we trained together, and with a little frame walk, she finished the London Marathon. Although it was like 12 o'clock, 12:30 at night, we finished, and she accomplished her goal, which was amazing. So that's one of my great achievements. She's helping my friend Karen, complete the London Marathon 1 year. For that, when I ran it backwards, I set the London Marathon record then, because I was the only person who's ever run it backwards. I'm going to Zambia. It's one of those trips I've been making since I was like 19. Initially, I was going to do the kind of Camp America and then maybe part of Asia, then maybe actually And then I left it because everything gets, like family and work and everything. And then it kept popping back into my mind, and I thought, no, actually, I'm going to go and do some work in Africa with some children, any part of Africa, because it's important for children to see that black people, like them, are also bringing joy and aid and good things to their life. So I'm going to go and work in a community with orphans. So I'm going to make beds for them and teach woodwork to them as well. Remember I said I had a fear of reading and writing, and I detested it. I didn't want nothing to do with it. And yet that's the only thing I want to do now, other than my other work that I do. But I absolutely love writing. And it took 12 years. But my first book, Dragonflies and Matchsticks, we received really well. And the second follow-up novel is there, waiting to go. I just believe in humanity, really, and being kind and good to people. There's no church for that. The church is in here, the temple is in here, the mosque is in here, and the holy places are in my heart. I don't need to go to anywhere and say, oh, look at me, I'm worshipping this way. No, that's ego. That's ego. I'm absolutely happy, glad to stand alone. Whatever there's millions of people running that direction. Okay, what are they running to? I'll just stand here, I'm okay here. It's a good experience for a lot of us to be alive, and we have running clean water, relatively, and still some air to breathe and food to eat, and we have no bombs falling on our heads right now. Yeah, okay, we have emotional challenges, but just keep talking about it and feeling your pain. I've never told anyone to not cry. Never. I will never. It's one word never come out of my mouth. 2 words. Just never tell anyone to don't cry, because you have to cry. You have to release. So I would just say, just to acknowledge yourself and your own worth. Yeah, because a lot of people want other people to do things for them, to fix things for them. Actually, no, you can do that yourself. You can get various different components to help you do that, but you can do that yourself. There's nothing so debilitating that renders anybody completely hopeless to help themselves. Humanity is such a blessing, such a gift, that the body is able to heal itself, the mind is able to heal itself, if we accept and allow it to. Therapeutic bits.